It was a great movie, but
Yeah.
it seemed like there was resistance to that movie.
It has been missing for years, but the truth about Mel Gibson's struggle to tell this story is finally out. Joe Rogan could not believe his ears when Mel described the roadblocks and the unexplained events that happened during production.
There's something about the written word that's like, it's a pretty interesting thing to throw into the mix. I know when I first started it was kind of confusing, but then I got really good at it.
Everyone talks about the intensity in the film, but they miss the spiritual battle happening behind the scenes. That is putting it lightly when you hear about the injuries the lead actor faced. This conversation reveals a side of Hollywood that stays closed to the public. Hands down, this is the most intense update ever. Hidden battle for truth. Mel Gibson and Joe Rogan sat in a room that suddenly felt very small as the actor began to peel back the layers of a story 20 years in the making. For starters, the industry did not just want this movie to fail, they wanted it to never exist at all. This film was a great movie, but it seemed like there was massive resistance to that movie from every major studio in town. Mel Gibson was on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about the sequel to his biblical epic, and the conversation quickly turned into a deep dive into the shadows of the movie business. Rogan, a man who has interviewed presidents, fighters, and whistleblowers, was visibly shaken by the details. This was not marketing or a way to get clicks. Gibson was pulling back a curtain that Hollywood had fought desperately to keep closed. Once a person understands what everyone missed about this film, they will never see it the same way again. To understand what Mel exposed, it is necessary to go back to the beginning. The project was never meant to be just another story about history. Gibson was not interested in pretty pictures and easy tales. He wanted something raw that would grab people by the throat. It was like making a film where the idea was that every person is responsible for the events on screen. As Mel explained to Joe, the entire point was that this was not just a past event, but something with present-day meaning for every single person watching. He spent years studying the 4 books of the Gospels, diving into every line about those final hours. But he went deeper than most filmmakers would dare. He pulled from ancient texts and spiritual sources, weaving together the weight of the events and the struggle happening in the air around them. The industry noticed this, and they did not like it. Projects were labeled old-fashioned or out of touch with what people wanted to see. The assumption was always that nobody wanted this kind of story anymore. Gibson experienced this resistance personally, and it was very painful. Studios that should have been fighting to work with an Oscar-winning director suddenly went cold. Phone calls went unanswered and meetings were canceled. Colleagues who had worked alongside him for years started keeping their distance. The message was clear. This story was not welcome. But Mel refused to walk away because his upbringing meant this was a personal mission. When the money dried up, he used $45 million of his own cash to pay for it. He built a team of people who shared his vision and were not scared of the noise. What came out of that struggle shocked the entire world. The movie became one of the highest-earning films in history, proving that millions of people were starving for exactly the kind of bold story that the bosses in Hollywood said nobody wanted. Something even weirder happened when the cameras finally started rolling. Energy during filming. The making of this film was anything but normal, and the things that happened on set defy any simple explanation. Jim Caviezel, the man chosen for the main role, went through real physical pain that ended up on the screen in ways no computer effects could ever copy. The cross he had to carry weighed over 30 pounds, which is a heavy load for anyone to bear for hours. During one shot, his shoulder was completely pulled out of place. This was not acting, it was a real injury that he had to work through while the cameras were moving. During another scene, he was accidentally hit twice by real whips. One hit was so hard it knocked the air right out of his lungs, leaving his hands bleeding and raw. His pain was not a performance. It was absolutely real, and that truth shows in every part of the finished movie. Then the lightning came. The assistant director was hit twice by lightning while they were working. Jim Caviezel was also hit during the final scene on the hill, yet he walked away without a single scratch on him. Mel told Joe that the air was electric during those moments. In old stories, lightning represents a power far beyond human control. The crew could not explain what was happening around them. These events created a feeling where the line between the natural world and something else felt very thin. People started wondering if something beyond a movie was taking place. The changes on set were not just about bodies and weather. One actor who played the man who betrayed the lead entered the project as someone who did not believe in anything spiritual. By the time they finished, he had changed his entire life and became a believer. Another actress was secretly pregnant during the shoot, acting as a quiet sign of life and hope in the middle of a story about loss. Mel also talked about reports of people getting better from sicknesses on set. A young girl with bad seizures went a whole month without a single episode after being near the filming. Whether these were big coincidences or something else, the cast and crew left the set feeling they had been part of something much bigger than a movie. These physical marks were just the start of the spiritual puzzles hidden in the film. Visual messages most people missed. Every single frame of this movie carries a deep meaning that most viewers simply glance over without thinking. Mel Gibson told Joe Rogan that every shadow was a choice and every line of talk was meant to go deep. The opening scene in the garden tells a person exactly what they are in for. It is dark and heavy, with the main character alone while his friends sleep. This shows someone who is fully human and feeling a weight that would crush anyone else. Then a shadow appears, representing a dark force whispering doubts. A snake comes out, but the main character crushes it under his foot. This is a direct nod to the very first book of the Bible and the promise of a future rescue for mankind. This was not a movie made for people to just eat popcorn and watch. Mel created a story that asks the viewer to lean in and think about things much bigger than themselves. One scene perfectly shows Mel's artistic goal. After the main event, the body rests in the mother's arms, looking just like the famous statue by Michelangelo. This picture shows sadness and grace at the same time. It speaks to everyone about love and hope, no matter what they believe. Critics were split right down the middle when it hit theaters. Roger Ebert, the most famous critic of his time, gave it 4 stars. He said he finally understood the depth of the sacrifice after seeing Mel's work. Ebert loved to find flaws in movies, but he could not find them here. Other critics praised the movie for being brave. However, some leaders were worried. They thought the story might lead to bad feelings towards certain groups of people. These were not small complaints, and the debate showed how important this story is to the world. Mel said he wanted to show that everyone is responsible for what happened, not just one group. He also put in things that were not in the books, like scary children following the man who did the betrayal. Mel said this was art used to show how guilt feels. The movie walked a fine line between a history lesson and a deep meditation. Different people came with different ideas and left with very different feelings. Almost nobody walked away feeling nothing at all. The heat of the argument only made more people want to see it. People who never watched religious movies went to see what the fuss was about. One famous critic saw something that changed the entire movie business forever. Massive response from the public. The public response was like a wave that the industry could not stop, even though they tried. Groups of people from churches and community centers went in huge numbers. Leaders gave talks about the movie, and the news was full of stories about it for months. Mel had made something that simply could not be ignored. It stayed in the top spots at the box office for a long time, beating movies with much bigger stars and more ads. This proved that a story told with real heart could win against the Hollywood machine. Joe Rogan noted that it is rare to see someone risk everything they have on a single idea. Mel did not just risk his money, he risked his name in a town that is very quick to forget people. This success paved the way for more stories like it, but none of them ever hit with the same force. The movie became a cultural moment that defined the early 2000s. It showed that people want to be challenged and they want to see things that feel honest. Even people who did not agree with the message had to admit that the craft was top tier. The way the light hit the stone and the way the sound was designed made it feel like being there. Mel's choice to use old languages that people do not speak anymore was another big risk. Most bosses said audiences would hate reading subtitles for 2 hours. Instead, it made the movie feel more real and more like a time machine. It removed the modern world and let people sit in the past. This helped the message land even harder. Joe Rogan asked if Mel knew it would be this big, and Mel admitted he just knew he had to do it. The cost was high, but the result was a piece of art that still gets talked about 2 decades later. All of this was just practice for what comes next in the story. Next project changing everything. Mel Gibson is not finished with this story, and what he told Joe Rogan about the next part is even more wild. For 7 years, he has been working on a sequel with a famous writer. This new project is about what happened after the tomb was found empty. But it is not a simple story. Mel described it as a cosmic exploration of the battle between good and evil. It goes from the fall of the sky beings to the very end. This is a massive goal that most movie makers would never even try. Mel wants to show how that one moment in time connects to everything that ever happened. He is looking at ancient books and historical facts to build a story that makes people see things through new eyes. For him, these are not just myths, they are facts proven by the people who were there. He asked Joe a very direct question: who gives up their life for something they know is a lie? That question is at the heart of his new work. The idea of someone coming back to life is the hardest thing for many to believe. Mel admitted that for a lot of his life, he just believed it because others did. But over time, he did his own search for the truth. That personal journey is what is driving this new movie. He does not want to just talk to people who already believe. He wants everyone to wrestle with big questions about life and what happens when it ends. So, what was the hidden truth that shook Joe Rogan? It was the weight of the whole journey. It was the fact that Mel stood alone against a world that wanted him quiet. It was the truth that strange things happened on set that no one can explain. It was the truth that faith sometimes means you have to suffer to get the word out. These truths cut through the noise of our busy world. They reminded Joe and his listeners that being real still matters. It showed that people still make art for reasons other than just getting rich. Some stories are worth any price you have to pay to tell them. Gibson's journey shows a total refusal to play it safe. This movie forces people to look at hard things like sacrifice. It does not give easy answers. It asks us to think about human nature and the price of being saved. The conversation between Mel and Joe showed that behind every big movie is a human story of struggle. It reminded us that the world has mysteries we cannot always explain. Mel bet everything on a story the world tried to stop, and he won. The hidden truth is not hidden anymore. It is there for anyone who wants to look and listen. Are these secrets enough to make a person rethink everything they know about history? What do you think about Mel's story? Leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe for more.